Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Andrew Claudio is with me. We're going to dive deep into everything that happened on night one of NBA free agency. We're about 4 hours into NBA free agency. A number of players have already signed. Other than really one or two deals, nothing too crazy, but we're going to dig in and talk through all of our favorite moves, some of the moves we don't like. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What's this gonna be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Andrew, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? How you doing? I'm happy to be here on an eventful night for every team but the one I root for and cover. I will just say, Sam, that for those watching on YouTube, and this will be our little preamble at the top, most of you, when I come on here, will usually see me in some type of different hat, headwear, whatever you want to call it. And I either go with the Mets or I go with this really fun, sorry I'm late, I was hooping hat. And I wanted to mix it up today, but I'm not on speaking terms with the baseball team I cover. I don't like the football team that I represent because they gave me 2 years of Aaron Rodgers and I don't want to think about them anymore. And I didn't have another hat to go to because I wanted to seem impartial and not wear a Knicks hat. So I'm sporting the New York Rangers. I don't think I could name three of them, but I am happy for this NBA free agency night one live stream to be wearing a hockey hat and looking forward to talking about all the moves that were made during the first couple hours of free agency.
I thought about not wearing the Pirates hat out of respect for the absolute ass kicking that the non-Paul Skeens Pirates laid on the good old New York Metropolitans this weekend, but you know, we had to go for it.
For context, when he talks about the ass kicking, the Pittsburgh Pirates, not to make this a full baseball show, but for the Pittsburgh Pirates, they came into this weekend series against the New York Mets with the fewest runs scored in Major League Baseball, toward the bottom in every offensive category. And they outscored the Mets in a 3-game sweep, 30-4. As I said, I am not on speaking terms.
Mitch Keller had not won a home game in over a year. Had a home win in over a year.
I threw like 6 solid 1-run innings against the New York Mets. The one being a home run to Juan Soto, who was awesome for the month of June, had one of the highest OPSs in team history. But as far as I'm concerned, you need more than one player, apparently. And right now you need a whole lot of pitching. Folks, just look behind the scenes. The texts in the middle of the night that I was sending to Sam Vecenie last night as he's talking me off of every ledge. Like, I'm ready to trade everything to the Red Sox for their whole roster if they're going to blow it up. I'm ready to trade every top prospect. And lo and behold, thankfully the Mets have an off night tonight, and I don't have to think about baseball after, as we just mentioned, we had our teeth kicked in by a last-place Pittsburgh Pirate team. But congrats, Sam. I hope you enjoyed your weekend of baseball. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to get one. Let's talk about basketball. So, by the way, as we talk here, 20 seconds ago, Jordan Clarkson to the New York Knicks. Just beautiful. We knew it was coming, though. Like, this was coming.
Of course. I'm all for it. I mean, do you want to react to it? I can.
We can react to it real quick.
Yes.
Jordan Clarkson is better than Cam Payne and DeLon Wright in the group that they had last year, kind of in the 8th and 9th man role. And that's what he'll be asked to play in all likelihood this season. I will say that Jordan Clarkson's season last year was pretty rough, but I think that in that 8th man role, he will be totally fine.
I look at, I mean, to your point about the 8th man role, that's where I have to go to this, because I don't think the Knicks are making any wholesale changes to the top 7 in their rotation. I don't think this being anything more than him replacing the Landry Shamet, although they might bring back Shamet, or the campaign minutes or spot in the rotation. this is a perfect role for him and spot in this team. Again, the joke I've been saying for a couple of weeks now here with Game Theory is the calculation I've always had to make when talking about Knicks and roster moves is like, well, how will Tibbs use him, right? And I don't know who's going to use him and how, because I don't know who the Knicks head coach is going to be. It looks like it's going to be Mike Brown. I look forward to learning more about Mike Brown and his tendencies, especially with the Knicks' current roster. Apparently, signing Jordan Clarkson is not as big of a roster shakeup that it's enough of a margin move that not having a head coach in place is not the biggest deal. So that's my initial reaction to it, while knowing this was probably coming down the pike for most of today.
It is just 10% funny, though, that you guys did a 4.5 hour live stream or 6 hour live stream with Knicks Film School or whatever. And then 5 minutes after it goes and ends, Jordan Clarkson ends.
To be clear, it was a 3.5 hour live stream where nothing Knicks related happened. I got the pod up, said, Sam, let's go live. And then minutes into the Game Theory live stream, Jordan Clarkson. Now, he can't sign for 2 days because he has to clear waivers first. But as Shams just reported, it looks like they're going live. Excuse me, that they're going to happen. I say going live because the Knicks Film School chat is now asking how they can go live again after a 3.5 hour live stream.
Yeah, that's insane. Okay. So, and I say this is somebody who went 2.5 hours with Bryce yesterday. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about here is actually not a free agency signing. I think the biggest move of the night is a trade. And what I'm most excited to talk about is that I kind of think the Nuggets might be really back right now after this deal. So the Denver Nuggets have traded Michael Porter Jr. and a 2032 unprotected first round pick to the Brooklyn Nets. Now for Cam Johnson, I'll finish the trade before we go into this. Now for people who don't know, in 2032, Nikola Jokic is going to be 37 years old. Nikola Jokic might be so good and his game might be so ground bound that he's still great at 37 years old. I think that's a very distinct possibility. But it seems like that is a high price tag, B, a good price tag for the Brooklyn Nets to use their $17 million of cap space on, because that's ultimately what this deal is to me. It is the Denver Nuggets getting essentially a like-for-like replacement for Michael Porter Jr. that costs $17 million per year less. Now, the one thing I will note, and John Hollinger had to explain this to me, so shout out to John. The Denver Nuggets will now be on the hook in regard to their apron and everything for, I think it's like $3.6 million in unlikely incentives for Cam Johnson. And because of that, they now only have, I think it's like $11.6 million away from the first apron at this point. So they don't quite have full ability to go and use the non-taxpayer mid-level or anything like that. But I think this is an absolute home run for the Denver Nuggets to use this 2032 first round pick to go get a player that, look, I think is like pretty equivalent to Michael Porter Jr. I'll hear out a case if you think he's better than Michael Porter Jr. Honestly, I don't know that I'll hear out the case otherwise that Michael Porter Jr. is better than Cam Johnson. I think he has some upside in terms of the way that he can create shots at times that Cam Johnson doesn't always possess necessarily. But for this specific roster in Denver, I think that this is a fantastic move that just makes an immense amount of sense. It clears their books in a real way to be able to go out and make moves, such as the one that they made immediately after this, although this would have been able to get done anyway, signing Bruce Brown to a vet minimum deal for a year. I love this. I think that this is really, really smart stuff from the Denver Nuggets, and I am really excited to kind of talk through where they go now from here. I did not necessarily think that they were going to be able to like move and shake in this way. I've always had questions about Michael Porter Jr. getting traded, if only because we know what the medical looks like from pre-draft, right? Like the whole reason he fell pre-draft was due to his medicals being a bit poor. So I've always kind of wondered, is he going to clear the, kind of trade physicals and everything that go through whenever you have to do these things? But I do at least think that this is a smart move that clears a lot of space for the Denver Nuggets to get better. And I would bet that after we see what else Denver does here, that I see them as the clear number 2 in the Western Conference based off of getting Bruce Brown and another really high level player. And I didn't think that would be the case yesterday after what Houston had done and gone and accomplished.
So I feel similarly and this was my reaction as the move was made, because I like Cam Johnson. I thought Brooklyn could have gotten more for Cam Johnson. It almost feels like you would need to attach a first-round pick to get off of the Michael Porter Jr. salary, and then the Cam Johnson asset becomes its own separate thing. So to swap one for the other just feels like a home run for Denver. I really like Cam Johnson, especially with what he's now making and how additive and what he commands in an offense. I think he's perfect for what Denver will be. I still have my own internal dialogue about them versus Houston, but maybe we get a them versus Houston playoff series. And I also recognize what Michael Porter Jr. was in that second round, or guess what he wasn't in that second round against OKC. And yet, despite what he wasn't, the Nuggets pushed the now NBA champs to the brink. And there were points in that series. We talked after Game 5 where I didn't know who was going to win that series. There were moments in Game 5.
Totally.
I thought we were going up 3-2, and it's just going to be a young team losing to a veteran team that's won a title before, and this will be part of OKC's growing pains. And now, to your point about what else and what this does for them financially, not only do you get off the Michael Porter Jr. money, but you bring in a solid rotation piece, and it allows you to do much more. Look, this is how you should operate, to Kroenke's point, when you have the best player in the world, or one of the best players in the world, at the centerpiece of your team. So good on Denver. They're one of the winners of the offseason so far, just with this move alone, not mentioning what else they're able to do.
Yeah, I would say that they have room for a $9 or so million player, somewhere in that ballpark at this point, and then they'll have to sign one more to like a veteran minimum deal as well. I would imagine that one more player might end up being a big, right? Like the veteran minimum player. But being able to go out now and have a roster that looks like Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, Christian Brown, and they're going to figure out what to do with the Christian Brown extension. I would imagine that that's coming down the pike here in the next, however long. Maybe it's 24 hours, maybe it's 4 months. They go right to the deadline, right in October as possible. But that 5 right there is quite good. And then you throw in Bruce Brown as well. And you throw in Deron Holmes being healthy. Maybe you get a leap from one of Peyton Watson or Julian Strawther, and you have this $9 million a year player. I think that's going to be a really, really big benefit to them. And if I was them, the way I would attack it is minimum guy for the big spot, because I think that they'll be able to find one of those guys, and like wing perimeter player for the other spot. And I'll have to think a little bit more about who that is, and we'll try and figure it out while we're talking maybe, but that's what this kind of screams to me. The one thing I will note about Cam Johnson does not always stay healthy. He does consistently miss time. Like this year, he had the ankle injury. He played 57 games for Brooklyn this year. He played 58 games for Brooklyn the year before. He played 42 games in 2023, 66 games in 2022, 60 games in 21, 57 games in 20. He's never played more than 66 games in a year. You should be going into this with your eyes open if you're a Denver Nuggets fan, that Cam Johnson is probably going to miss somewhere between 15 and 20 games. It's the reality of who he is. But Michael Porter Jr. is also a guy that it tends to be like more, tough injuries. Like, if he gets hurt, he's out for a while injuries, but 81 games and 77 games the last 2 years, even though this year he definitely played injured for a portion of the playoffs at the very least. Right. So I do think it's worth going into this like eyes open, like, hey, you're getting Cam Johnson, which allows you to kind of accentuate the depth. But honestly, it probably does mean that you need more depth as well in order to account for the games that Cam Johnson is going to miss as well. But at their ceilings, I think that they're pretty similar players right now at this point for how they fit within the Denver offense at the very least. I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael Porter Jr. We'll talk about Brooklyn in a second here because the fights between him and Cam Thomas for the ball are going to be pretty amazing. I think that for Denver, this is the exact move that they should have been making. And I'm really excited to see, like, okay, can Denver now find a way to find a taker for Dario Saric's money for a year? I mean, God, if that happens, if they can find somebody that'll just take that money, it's a real, like, they have like full mid-level and might be able to go find somebody that's like really, really good.
It's interesting that you bring up the regular season. Maybe this is just my perceived perspective. That's English. My thought on Denver is that while the regular season does still matter, I think with Jokic, their floor is like a 47 win team, even in this loaded Western Conference anyway. So
Sure.
if Cam Johnson is to miss 25, whatever games, 30 games in the conference, then yes, it does mean you have to account for it. But I don't know. I just, like, Jokic was my MVP pick last year along with Bryce. And it's because of the turmoil, quote unquote, that you heard was happening with the feud between the front office and the head coach and everything going on there, and his teammates that missed games, and yet still they won 50 games and were like a solid 4 seed in a loaded Western Conference. And I just, that's a Jokic play for me, that their floor, with whatever injury scares they may have with Cam Johnson, are rooted in whatever Jokic can drag them to. And it's why I'm immediately going to their ceiling here and looking at, I like Cam Johnson much better in a specific role, and a less needy role, which isn't probably the best way to put it, because I like Michael Porter Jr. too, but I think that ship had just kind of sailed. And look, like, to your point, everything we're talking about with what they can do afterwards, and like the Bruce Brown of it all, like, they're going to be able to now get even deeper, and it'll be curious to see what this new front office potentially does.
Yeah, and just kind of looking through free agents for Denver, like guys that would make sense for them. I mean, I know I just said that go, small in the backcourt, find another guy, and then go big with the minimum. I mean, like, if they could go sign Larry Nance, I think that'd be like the perfect guy for their team, to be honest with you. Another guy that will miss time via injury, but really, really useful player. I know that Chris Paul wants to go like closer to LA, it seems like. But man, if they sign Chris Paul, I would love this team. Chris Paul can still play a little bit.
Can we do the exercise of, and I know we're going to talk about what else Houston did, but just like where would you have them clearly number 2? Would you have Houston like 2A, 2B? Is there another team I'm not thinking of?
Like maybe Denver signs a player that I'm not all that interested in, right? Like, what if they sign like Precious Achiuwa to 1 year, $9 million, because they feel like they need to like use that money, right? I'm not saying they're going to do that, but
I would just personally advise against it. God bless Precious Achiuwa. He's also a Mets fan. I would advise against that personally.
Yeah. So like right now, as of the time that we're publishing this podcast and speaking and, literally doing this live, I think I would have Houston ahead, but it's very close. And in the playoffs, I would have Denver ahead, just because I trust Jokic on some level in the playoffs in a way that this Houston group just hasn't proven yet outside of Kevin Durant, right? So I would be inclined to trust Denver in the playoffs, but in the regular season, I would pick Houston to finish second in the West as of right now. We'll see if that changes. Yeah, man, if I was Denver, I would be. And if you're Chris Paul, man, and you're trying to win a title, like that's the last thing you got to do. I don't think you're getting a better spot than this one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man.
Especially coming after Russ was there last year. That'd be such an upgrade. This is not even like a disrespect to Russ. I thought he had a great season for what they asked him to do in Denver. But it's just like when I talk about adding the other smartest mind that we've seen as a ball handler next to Jokic, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
And then the other one that someone brought up here in the comments is Al Horford to Denver. That'd be fun too. Al Horford, I think, is a little closer to being cooked than what Chris Paul is. But they're probably, I don't know. Horford was pretty good last year for Boston. Started a number of games for them and was okay in the playoffs. He looks a little bit slower in terms of his movement skills at this point, which is really the added benefit of having Al Horford at this point. But I mean, they have some guys that they can go get that I think would be really, really valuable for them. I think they're in a really positive position. I think they've really upgraded this roster now and positioned themselves to upgrade this roster, maybe is the better way to put it, throughout the course of this thing. And the other thing is, like, what if you did a thing where, because you can use the mid-level exception as a trade exception at this point, what if you found a taker for Dario Saric in a deal and you went out and you got like a $14 million a year player and the other team has a trade exception that they can just fit Saric into, right? So, you basically structure it as like two separate swaps, kind of. That's one that also kind of tracks for me a little bit in a fun way, at the very least.
Anyone come to mind for you, that 14 or so-ish million player?
So if they are going to stay below the first apron, I would imagine that Denver is going to try and stay below the tax this year, just because it makes sense to do so, frankly. The reason for that being that they've been in the repeater for a few years now, and given that they're so close, it might make sense to use this year as the year where you get under and then you can shoot back over when you're trying to build the rest of the roster out. I was trying to kind of figure out if there was a sign and trade for like a Tre Mann, but Tre Mann's a free agent. Like, if you just want to do Tre Mann, you could do Tre Mann. But like, could you do something like, I'm really trying to think of a name. You know what I mean? I don't know that I like full scale have a name right now where it like ticks all of the boxes necessarily, but I mean, I actually do know what the name is, but this guy will cost too much. Like Kobe White, like, fits within this number now. You know what I mean? But it just, he costs too much asset wise that they just don't have in order to be able to make a deal for him.
Counterpoint. Counterpoint. Are we sure that you actually have to give up that much to get a valuable asset from the Chicago Bulls?
Counterpoint Bulls.
Right. Like, Counterpoint Bulls is my counterpoint there.
I'd be surprised, I think, is what I would say. I would be surprised. Yeah, look, I think there are names out there that can work for them, though, is what I would say. For the Brooklyn Nets, I think this is a deal that makes a lot of sense. Like I said at the top here, having said that, this is actually a good name, Ayo Dosunmu. If you wanted to go find somebody like this, if I was them, I might try and go do something for Ayo Dosunmu. But again, they don't have a ton of assets is the issue. You're really trying to get like a guy that is probably on expiring, that is more of like a guard type who can create a little bit of offense. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. I would guess that the Bulls aren't just giving away Dosunmu, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Who knows? Yeah. Your face, Andrew, is not wrong.
Just counterpoint Bulls, man. I would walk in and just wait until they say no before you actually decide they won't do something.
It's a fair point. Okay. So for the Brooklyn Nets, they get this 2032 first round pick. I think that's a huge win for them. They're probably ecstatic to use $17 million on Michael Porter Jr., who is an upside swing for them, at least on some level. Maybe he can get back to, I don't think he has quite the flexibility he had when he was younger, obviously, to be able to create shots in the way that he did when he was a young player. But they could look at it and say, hey, we're going to give him the opportunity to go nuts. And maybe he averages 23, 25 a game for a bad team in Brooklyn. And, we'll see where he stands going into the 2026 summer when he'd be on an expiring contract, right? I think he played hurt for the playoffs. Like, I don't think what we saw in the playoffs was the real Michael Porter Jr. So we'll see what that looks like. The big thing, though, for me is just the Nets are clearly just trying to accumulate assets, paying $17 million to get like a really high-end Denver first-round pick for when Jokic is 37 years old. It makes sense to me.
Again, I maintain that I thought Cam Johnson's value was a little higher, but to what you're talking about in getting something back for the future and accumulating the asset, and if he plays healthy, maybe you could. How many years does he have left? Like, there's no way you can reroute him so could you reroute him at the deadline if he's a productive piece?
Maybe.
Also,
I think you're more likely to reroute him either next summer or at the deadline the following year. I would guess he's in Brooklyn for next year.
Right. I mean, look, I'm still very curious about their draft night plans and the needs.
Aren't we all?
Right. So just like that has to inform how I also feel about getting another guy that needs the ball. You have a lot of young cooks in said kitchen, and now you add another veteran one. And not that Michael Porter Jr. can't play off ball, but is he going to play off ball toward Jaeger Demon and like a lot of the rookies that you now have,
That's what my question is Michael Porter Jr. was happy to play off the ball next to Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Is that going to continue to be the case when it's Jaeger Demon, Cam Thomas, Ben Suraf at some point, Nolan Traore, etc.? I'm interested to see if that will be the case. I don't know that will be the case.
Yeah.
He might see this as his chance to like go be the Jeremy Grant, right? Instead of being the role player, go be like the number one option, right? So
I hate to say it, but there is a very recent example of a guy that was fine playing off the ball that went to Brooklyn in a trade and did whatever he wanted on offense and then ended up not being that happy in Brooklyn. Now, I don't think they're getting 5 picks from their crosstown rival, obviously because they can't, but like 5 picks for like they did for Nickeil Bridges in Brooklyn. But it did not seem like it went all that well in Brooklyn when they had Nickeil in place there. So I think that this is between Michael Porter Jr. and what he potentially could look at this year as, and going from a situation where you're a contender to now in a very clear situation where you're not, and how you approach it. So from the actual Nets perspective, in a vacuum, I don't hate getting an asset like that in the future. I just have questions about what this year actually looks like for them and how they implement all these different pieces they have.
I'm also just not sure exactly what they're building toward a little bit. Like what are you trying to accomplish, I guess? Because you don't really have like a huge upside swing on the roster. Like Oklahoma City during their rebuilding years had Shea, right? And Shea was he was not considered an MVP guy when he was there at first, but was certainly a huge upside swing that they took a chance on in the Paul George deal, right? I don't see Jaeger or any of these other rookies this year as quite that. So it feels like they're just like kind of spinning their wheels a little bit to me, unfortunately, at this point. And that is what would be concerning to me if I was a Nets fan. But what is not concerning to me, what is never concerning to me is trade coffee. Whether you're gearing up for back-to-back meetings, shuttling kids back and forth to activities, or tackling an endless to-do list, your morning sets the tone for it all. That's why it should start with the perfect cup of coffee, crafted just for you. And that's why Trade Coffee is the #1 United States coffee destination. It brings you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Trade's experts have taste tested thousands of coffees to curate over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or you know your favorites, they'll hand pick the perfect coffee just for you, even if it's cold brew for those hot summer days. Just take their quiz, and in under a minute, they'll match you with your perfect coffee. If that first bag isn't quite right, Trade will replace it for free until they nail it. Trade's prices are on par with grocery store brands, but the quality is just next level. That's why this is a win-win. You're supporting local roasters, you're getting good prices, everyone in the ecosystem wins. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/game. That's drinktrade, TRADE.com/game, GAME, for 50% off your 1-month trial. That's drinktrade.com/game. Okay. Let's next go to the team that I think has also been a huge winner this cycle, and that is the Atlanta Hawks. I have absolutely loved what the Atlanta Hawks have done this summer. And I think that you and I and Bryce, we've talked about the Eastern Conference feeling like a group of 4, right? We felt like the Knicks, the Cavs, probably Orlando in some respect, maybe like one other team would kind of fit into that next year. Boston being down, not really having a starting center right now, without Jason Tatum as well, is a huge issue. The Indiana Pacers being without Tyrese Halliburton feels like an issue. Milwaukee Bucks being without Damian Lillard feels like an issue. The Detroit Pistons, we'll talk about them in a minute. I'm really interested to see how they kind of structure their offseason. I think that their signing of Karis LeVert was kind of smart in the way that they structured that, at least. I think I would have Atlanta as a clear top 4 team right now for next season in the Eastern Conference following their moves. I love that they've gone out, used the number 22 overall pick to essentially acquire Kristaps Porzingis, but also in that process, set themselves up for the future by getting rid of the Terrence Mann money, which was not money that people were excited to have. He had 3 years, $46 million left on his deal. By advantaging the Brooklyn Nets to take that deal with the number 22 overall pick and then bringing back Porzingis, we'll see if Porzingis can be healthy. We'll see if he can get through a full season. He's a valuable player for them. At the very least, like, he will be useful, but because they already have Onyeka Okongwu, they don't really desperately need him either. They were in a really positive position to take a risk on Kristaps, especially whenever you have Onyeka there and you're getting off the Terrence Mann money as well to begin with. Then they do the deal of all deals, trading number 13 for an unprotected New Orleans Pelicans pick that, I would probably have as a top 5 projection for next year right now. Then today they go out and they sign Luke Kennard, 1 year, $11 million. But more than that, they go out and they get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 4 years, $62 million, which I believe actually does fit into the mid-level exception to start, especially whenever you consider for raises. They have structured this as a sign and trade, and I would imagine that sign and trade is going to fit. I mean, here's the crazy thing, Andrew, because they have structured this the way they've structured this deal, they can fit Nickeil either into their mid-level exception as a sign and trade, or if they can, and they can do that, fit him into the mid-level exception. And then if they can find something in the next couple of days that allows them to utilize the $25 million trade exception that they still have, they could do both. Like they could go out and they could get a really, really awesome player. But given the fact that they have Kennard, they actually can't do that. I lied. So they've done this. They've done this the right way. Never mind. They've put Nickeil Alexander-Walker into the $25 million trade exception. My brain works. I promise. And then they've signed Luke Kennard to the mid-level. Regardless, home run offseason from Atlanta so far. Anssi Salah, their new general manager, I think he might be awesome at this. Like he might be like genuinely great at this. The way that they have structured this entire offseason to be able to go and get, this could be fun too. So Mark Deeks apparently said they structured LeVert as a sign and trade and created a trade exception, which was used for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. That's interesting. They could do that. That is interesting. But the key is that like when does all of this run out? You need to find like the timing. It might make more sense to keep that trade exception for the full year as opposed to the $25 million one that runs out a little bit sooner. There's a lot of, they'll have to make decisions on how they use their trade exceptions here. But again, I say all this to say, Anssi Salah is a big reason why they have these trade exceptions to begin with. But the way that they've balanced flexibility, the future, getting off the man money, getting the top 5 potential pick from the New Orleans Pelicans, but also like the ability to go out and win now. This is an unbelievable offseason to me.
So, as one of the other teams in contention for said Eastern Conference that struggled a little bit, that watched their team struggle a little bit with the Hawks, with some of the length that they have, as much as I will continue to remind people that especially anytime I'm told that Trae Young owns the Knicks, that he's 11-19 in his career against the New York Knicks. And that's including said 5-game series in which Julius Randle turned into a pumpkin and should more be the reason why people evaluate said series. I'm annoyed how much I love what the Hawks have done this offseason. And we talked about this a week ago, Sam, when we were just evaluating the Porzingis trade and giving Trey a pure 5-out look when Dyson Daniels isn't on the floor makes them a scary offense. And now you add Alexander Walker. And this is honestly, to your point about that they might be good at this. This is something I always appreciate when teams do this. And there's a lot of good teams. Honestly, I thought Nico Harrison was doing this last year until he traded Luka. But when you clearly recognize who's the centerpiece, who's the core guy that you need to inform all of your decisions after you've identified that, and you build around it. And around Trey, you have all these wings, you have pick and roll partners, you have defense. If you want to go certain looks where it's kind of hiding him, you can. If you have looks where you want to go 5-out, you can. And then you add in the take advantage of New Orleans. I suggest every team just do that, by the way. Take advantage of New Orleans. Add that to part of your offseason calculation or just front office calculation. Like the fact they were able to do that. And I'll just say this, Sam, twice in the last calendar year to 2 different versions of New Orleans, because let's not forget about the DeJounte Murray trade. Now you do this and you have what's currently on the roster with Alexander Walker. I hate how much I like the Hawks objectively. They are a team that, to your point, should absolutely be considered a top 4 contender. And then look, playoffs are a different conversation. But man, I was thinking this last year when the Knicks lost to them in the in-season tournament. I was thinking this last year just watching when they would, especially if Dyson Daniels is able to take some type of leap as a shooter. And then who knows what happens with Risa Shea in another year into his career. This is clearly a well-run team that is putting a perfect team together around Trae Young. And I hate that I have to give them that credit because it's objectively a very good offseason for them.
Yeah, and to be clear, LeVert is not a sign and trade. It's only a 2-year deal. So You can't sign and trade if it's only a 2-year deal. That's just not something that is like legal.
Got
So
it.
whoever, if Deke said that, he's incorrect, unfortunately. So I checked with John on that. John is smarter at this than I am. John is very good at front office things. This
Shout
is why
out,
I love
John.
Hollinger. I need to get Hollinger back on the show. I love John. Anyway, Atlanta veteran, and I believe John lives in Atlanta at least a decent amount of time throughout the year. This roster is just really fun. It is Trae Young. I'm gonna have to expand it a little bit. It's a little too small.
Yeah.
Trae Young, Dyson Daniels, Zachary Rissache, Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, and Yeka Okongwu, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard is your top 8. That is a sick top 8. That's a top 8 that's flexible. That's a top 8 that allows you to go big and small. That's a top 8 that is awesome on defense and insulates Trae Young. You might want one more ball handler. I think that's probably what they're envisioning with Kennard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels, that they might be able to get away with, kind of making it work with those 3, plus maybe Jalen Johnson leading the bench unit, right? And then you have whatever Kobe Buffkin is. Like Kobe Buffkin, I loved him pre-draft. He just has gotten so snake bitten with injuries that it's a shame that we haven't gotten a chance to see what he is. But he was always like a really interesting, flexible, intriguing player, I thought. And I guess like Krejci is also like a ball handler in some respect too. I wonder if they just have enough to get by in moments where Trae Young is off the court with their ball handling. I wonder if they have just enough 1.5s. You know what I mean? Guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who played point guard at Virginia Tech, Luke Kennard, who can handle the ball here and there, Dyson Daniels, who came up as a point guard here in Australia, Jalen Johnson being a guy who can run the break. I don't know. They might have enough. I'd probably want one more ball handler. Do you know who this spot might make sense for, Andrew?
Who?
I can't believe I'm going to say this.
Who?
I think it makes sense for Campaign.
Hey, once a Nick. I thought you were going Russell Westbrook with that. But
I think it
doubt
makes
he would
sense
sign
for
for that
Cam.
money. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this might be like a good third guard. I don't know if you want like a Russ who's going to come in and be like domineering in that way, but I do think if you want like a guy who can run the show a little bit, I think Campaign would be an interesting one. Both of the Joneses are off the table already. Something like that, I think, would be useful.
Look, depending on how many minutes you want to dedicate to your 9th, 10th man in this situation, I agree with you that Alexander Walker, Kennard, and to Shane's point, Cole Anthony
would be a good name here too. I think
that's an option. I personally want all second units to be run by Jalen Johnson. So that's to your point about Campaign. He can play off of your quote unquote second best player, but is largely the focus of your second unit. I was just looking up the Trae Young career minutes and what he's like normally logging. Last 2 years each, he logs 36 minutes a game. So if you're doing the math there, you're looking for 12 to 15 minutes, which is the perfect Campaign role. And he can play with Trae in certain lineups if you need to, because he can play off ball, shot the hell out of the ball for the Knicks. And look, I repeat, this is a team that has many options on top of what they've already done that makes them, I don't know about winning the East, but I would stare at odds if you gave them to me. That they've put together a really good team for next season. It wouldn't shock me. Whenever we do over-unders going into next year, Sam, I would just like to preemptively take the Hawks over.
I absolutely just Googled to see if we have any win total over-unders yet. We don't. Them or Orlando heading into the year next year?
Ooh. Well, to your point, that's my 3-4 right now, but I just don't know the order yet. I would probably say Orlando, but I'm not stern in my projection of that it's like it's Orlando, of course. Like if you told me Atlanta finished third ahead of Orlando, I wouldn't. I could see that reality, absolutely. What about you?
Close, really close for me. I think I would go Orlando still. I think that they need to have like Franz and Paulo take like one more like mini jump each, right? And I also think that Atlanta just has a few more injury guys that worry me a little bit more, like Porzingis, right? And like they're hoping that Kobe Buffkin might be able to be like a ninth man. You know, Jalen Johnson has struggled to stay healthy, you know, the last couple of years for a full year, right? I think I would go Orlando, but it's close to me. It is close. And look, this Atlanta team, if you remember, I talked a lot about them throughout the year as a team you don't really want to play in the playoffs. Like I kind of said, like with the Knicks, like I would not want to play Atlanta in the playoffs, particularly was one team that I was worried about for New York. I think that stands still. Like they went out and they got playoff guys. Like Kristaps allows you to play 5 out, which is a thing that you need, a look that you need in the playoffs. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a playoff guy. I think Zachary Ricochet at some point is going to be a playoff guy. He just needs to get a little bit stronger, right? I like that they've valued players that play up in the biggest moments as well. And this is the final point here. All of what they have done over the last week, and Milwaukee fans will be annoyed by this, a whole lot of other people will be annoyed by this. I think that they have positioned themselves better for Giannis than any other team in the league. And the reason that I say that is that they now own Milwaukee's 2026 first rounder. If Milwaukee wants to trade Giannis, they probably want their own pick back. Atlanta can offer them that pick. And they now have Jalen Johnson. They have Dyson Daniels. They have Zachary Ricochet to be able to offer in a deal. Like they have a lot of pieces that I would want if I was Milwaukee, if I was looking at a Giannis deal, which to be clear, again, nobody is looking for a Giannis. It feels like nobody's looking for a Giannis deal right now.
Keywords in that sentence you just said were right now. I have some thoughts about, and you're more informed than me, so maybe that's your right now is much more important than my right now. I just have some thoughts on what Milwaukee's done so far that isn't a desperate, we must do everything to keep Giannis. Look, I tend to think Houston, if they wanted to, they could beat an Atlanta offer, but you're right in that 2026 Bucks pick is probably the most valuable asset because you get control over your draft for a year. And yeah, they become a very fascinating Giannis team if they want to make an even bigger home run swing, which, look, my whole thought with any Giannis sweepstakes that might pop up is that why would he leave Milwaukee? It's especially why would he leave the Eastern Conference? You're telling me he gets to stay in the Eastern Conference and gets to play with Trae Young? It's it's a scary thought. We'll see what eventually happens over the next couple weeks if there becomes any type of sweepstakes to that end.
Yeah. And someone asked in the comments, what's the salary going out in a Giannis deal? I believe that Jalen Johnson being at 30 and Ricochet being at 13 gets you pretty damn close now in terms of the money that you have to send out. So it's actually like pretty doable financially for them to be able to do a Giannis deal as well. But look, that's flexibility, optionality. Another thing that happened here is these next two teams or this team is connected to the next team we want to talk about. We're going to talk briefly about the Houston Rockets. We talked for 30 minutes about the Houston Rockets yesterday, Bryce and I. So we're not going to run through everything that happened, right? We're not going to like sit here and dig totally into Steven Adams and Fred VanVleet and the KD deal and everything. But the Houston Rockets, something that we mentioned yesterday was a possibility. They did sign Dorian Finney-Smith to a 4-year, $53 million deal. And then they also have signed Clint Capella to a 3-year, $21.5 million deal. That is somewhat confusing to me, if I'm being honest. If I was Clint Capella, I don't know why I would do this, because he's now their third center. He's not as good as Steven Adams. He's not as good as Alperin. I know that they play big, but also you have Jabari, who you might want to play small occasionally here and there with. It's interesting to me. And this deal basically has to be structured as a sign and trade, I believe. I don't think that the Hawks have enough space to be able to do Jock Landale getting like some sort of monetary guarantee. So I am wondering if this ends up being the Cam Whitmore kind of. Cam Whitmore's obviously been in the trade rumors here for a minute. I wonder if this does end up being, maybe you send out Cam Whitmore or something in this deal. Like if you do Nate Williams and Cam Whitmore, that's like $5 million going out. And again, I'm not advocating for this by any stretch of the imagination. I just wonder if that's like the easier way to make this work, kind of, to do the Clint Capella deal than anything. And I'm not reporting that that's what's happening. I'm just saying that I wonder if it's something like that.
Yeah.
Because they have to send money out in some way, I feel like, to be able to do this.
So my thought is similar to yours. Like, they already have two centers. They just extended Jabari Smith, which is why I then went to the Giannis thought of how much longer is Şengün there. Look, my thought when the KD trade happened, I haven't said anything about it here yet, but
so for what it's worth, real quick, Jake Fisher is saying that it's just like a second round pick swap and cash to the Hawks. Okay, interesting. Then do they have some sort of exception that I'm missing they can put Capella into?
I don't know.
Continue though. I'm sorry.
I just, my first thought when the KD trade happened, and more specifically, what they were able to still keep after Durant was traded and what the package was, it's like they're still set up to make another pretty significant move. Now, I didn't factor in Giannis. I wondered if that was like a Jaylen Brown type of deal, which I don't think Boston is trading Jaylen Brown. But they're now set up with the salary that they have to send out and the assets and the picks that they still have to send out to make one more big move, which is why the Giannis thing could become a thing, watching their free agency couple days be like, we're bringing back Bobby Portis and we're bringing back Kevin Porter and not significant, like Torian Prince. And it's just kind of a version of run it back without Dame. They just, again, they're not operating like a team that is, we're doing everything and moving heaven and earth to show Giannis that we're committed to building around you in a weak Eastern Conference year, which then makes me wonder, are we getting the notification that like he has now decided to look elsewhere? And then is Şengün then a possibility to be in a Giannis trade as the salary going back? I don't know if that's too speculative, if you want to even go down that direction, but that was one of my thoughts, especially as today has played out. While, look, just recognizing I also like what Houston has done so far this offseason, including what they did today with Dorian Finney-Smith. The Capella thing, though, doesn't make sense to me that he would sign there at this point in his career to be a third center, even if it is just simply Steven Adams insurance, you know?
I think it probably is Steven Adams insurance. The other thing I will say is you look around the big market, right? Daron Sharp got $6 million. We don't have a number yet for 8, and he gave back $10 million. I would assume that, you know, his representation feels confident that they're going to be able to get that $10 million back in some respect, right? I'm trying to figure out exactly what the big market was, and I wonder if this was just the best number. Like, is it just simply Clint Capella had offers of $5 and $6 million, and Houston came over the top for $7, and he just wanted the money? Is that it?
I mean, possibly. I have to think at this point in your career, and look, I'm always remembering whenever I talk to people that are more informed than me that saying how much money do you potentially need is a silly thing to say, because the answer to that question is always more. So if, like you said, the best offer available was Houston, then sure. the playing time continues to be the thing that stands out. I would think if I'm Clint Capella that I value my services as more than just a just in case center, So look, maybe there's another move coming that I'm not seeing right now, but like I'm staring at their depth chart right now. Do you think Kevin Durant's playing the 4 next? So ESPN has them at Tari Eason at the 3. I would assume Jabari Smith Jr. was just signed to still be a starter, right?
Yeah, I mean, my guess on what they start next year is, we said this yesterday, it's probably going to be Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Şengün would be my guess. Like, not a certainty. And look, Tari Eason's going to sign an extension. It's also going to be $20 million a year, I would imagine.
Right.
So, yeah, like that tracks to me. Something in that ballpark tracks to me.
So then it's just personally not clicking right now that Capella would go there just to be a just in case option, while recognizing like that is absolutely a great deal if you just got him to be there to be a just in case option. I love the DFS, the Dorian Finney-Smith move for them. Yeah. Just to focus on that a little bit. I loved it when the Lakers got him last year. I know the Knicks and Nets have made one trade this century, and it was last year. But I was hoping that maybe that can of worms had opened, and then the Knicks could potentially throw 2 seconds at them to get DFS. I love that he can, play multiple positions. So if you want to go small, you can. If you want to play big, he can be your 3 in certain lineups. And if the shooting comes back like it wasn't last year, I think that's just a great 6th, 7th man that you could put on your roster if you're Houston.
Yeah, so the way I'm envisioning Finney-Smith, and I like Finney-Smith, I think it's like a totally fine signing. I think it's probably a little bit more than I would have been comfortable giving Finney-Smith in terms of years. Maybe not price tag, but in terms of years for sure. And we'll transition to the team that he left next when we go through this. But I like Finney-Smith quite a bit. I think he is a good physical, strong defender who can hold up at the point of attack against bigger bodies, right? He's a good on-ball defender who is strong and long and physical. I did not think that his movement last year was quite as good as expect. I did not think that he was quite the level that he was back when he was in Dallas, right? And people think of him like that in a lot of ways, right? I like this deal for them, but given then the Capella signing as well, I do wonder, like, are you going to use him on 2s in the way that you use like Dillon Brooks kind of? And Brooks isn't like the fastest guy either, right? Like Dillon Brooks's movement was like a little bit slower last year as well. But I just worry a little bit, I guess is what I would say. Like Dorian Finney-Smith is 32 years old. He's a good defender now. He's not like a elite level defender. And offensively, he is a like standstill 3-point shooter at this point. He's very, very good when he is standstill open from 3. He'll make 40% of them for sure. But he's like not a guy who's going to move around the offense at a super high level either.
Breaking news, Gary Trent Jr. to the Milwaukee Bucks. That's just got that alert come across my desk real quick.
Hey, sure. Let's go nuts.
Sure. That's my reaction to. Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So like, I say all this to say that yes, they have replaced Dillon Brooks with a cheaper version of Dillon Brooks. Right. And that's probably the way I should look at this is you have this guy who is really good and is good on defense at certain things, guarding 4s. He was good at stepping up the lineup as well last year. I'm assuming that there's like some sort of protection on the 4th year, given that he would be 35 or 36 at that point. I don't know necessarily what that is, team option, non-guarantee, whatever it is. I have no idea. But I'm intrigued. He's a great 8th man, I guess is the way to put it. He's a great 7th or 8th man, I think is the perfect way to say it.
especially on a loaded team like this. So I'm right there. With you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like I would say Tari Eason is very likely to be a better player than him next year. And they're paying Dorian Finney-Smith $14 million a year. Right. It feels a little bit aggressive to me.
I mean, look, there is a world where, and this is the Kevin Durant conversation that you have to have. Like, there's no guarantee he plays like 70, 75 games. Like, this also adds just a depth piece to your roster and your rotation that has experience starting, can just bump up in the rotation if need be, and you want to put Eason into the starting five. I'm more comfortable with the number than I think you are, but I also, I do hear your concerns, and I think the fact that I've always been a fan of DFS of Dorian Finney-Smith, and the Rockets are able to lean on a surplus in their rotation of guys I would trust in a playoff series, which is, I think, what you have to think about when you're looking at where they've now gone with this roster, you know?
I will say this though.
What?
They have the ability to throw out like a Men Thompson, Tari Eason, Dorian Finney-Smith, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith lineup that is fucking terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So good. It is just so good to be able to like throw that out there, but then they can go super big with like the Alperin and Steven Adams lineups too if they want. This is a team that's built for the playoffs now, I think. I will say that. That's why I like this deal for them. Like, we're going to talk about the Lakers next, and like I think it's fine for the Lakers too. Like, I would have preferred to have kept Dorian Finney-Smith, obviously, but like I think this team is built for the playoffs in a lot of ways because of their lineup flexibility. Really, it's going to come down to, can Kevin Durant be the shot creator that they need? But this is a team that is, along with Denver, I do kind of think that there's a little, this is a good question for you now. Do you think there's a little bit of separation between Oklahoma City, Denver, Houston now, and the rest of the West, which would be like Minnesota, the Clippers, the Lakers, Golden State, etc.?
Yes, but I want to respect Minnesota and say like,
yeah,
like what they became when Randall came back last year, like just this wins machine. I want to know how replicable that is. A team makes a move like that. They're able to keep Naz Reid. The 3-point volume that they leaned into last year, I think, is just very important. You add in like, was it Dillingham coming into the rotation and taking the place of Alexander Walker and what he may potentially give you. Like, I'm somewhat high on Minnesota while recognizing the conference they're in doesn't allow you to be too high on them. All this to say, those would be my clear top three, but I don't want to say like Minnesota is nowhere near their class or their league. They just may by default end up being my 4 seed when it comes to predictions next year.
I think it is just 4, honestly. Like, I think that you might just throw Minnesota into that group and say that that's your 4. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I feel totally good. Like, I think there's a bit of separation now, whereas last year it was, everybody 2 through 8 was the same. I feel like this year it's 2 through 4 is a group right now, and then 5 through whatever you want to say, including San Antonio, including whoever you want to throw in there, is probably in a group now that is going to be interesting to track throughout the course of the year, in my opinion. So, Look, Houston's done an amazing job this summer, and Rafael Stone, everybody in that front office has done a fantastic, fantastic job of building this roster, utilizing the assets they have at their disposal, continuing to re-sign guys, making this a good place to play, building an identity around defensive dominance and flexibility, being able to go big, being able to go small, going out and getting Kevin Durant, obviously, to solve your biggest issue, which is shot creation. We'll see what Reed Shepherd is. Maybe he can solve that as well. It's a huge, huge benefit, I think, to the Houston Rockets front office, and a tip of the cap to them in terms of what they've been able to do. A team that's kind of been going the other direction to the Houston Rockets over the last couple of years is the Memphis Grizzlies, unfortunately. In Memphis, I think has had a good day, honestly. It's not a great day, but it's definitely a good day. They have re-signed Jaren Jackson Jr. to a 5-year, $240 million extension. It is the max that they could give him based off of what they're capable of giving him by renegotiating upward. Jaren Jackson Jr. was slated to make, what is it? It's 21 million. I think this year was the vibe. Like he was supposed to make 21 million. Now he's going to be making, I think it's going to be up around like 33, 34, 35 ish, somewhere in that window. So Jaren was at 23.4 that he was slated to make this year. Keith Smith has it at 33 that they're renegotiating him up to. Having done the math on this before, and like Keith's very good at this, so, you know, only take what I say with a grain of salt comparatively. I think that the number, if he's getting 240 in new money, I think the number that he's getting up to is like 36 as opposed to 33. And then that would be 51 million in 2026-27, 55 in 2027-28, 59.2 in 2028-29, and 63.3 in 29-30. If that adds up to the 241 number that I had previously, whenever I did this like max extension kind of figuring out, right? Trying to make it through and figure out what's going on. So that's how you get to the 240 number. I'm assuming at the end of the day, they're just going to have to find a landing spot for Cole Anthony, which, you know, we'll see. Typically, these things don't get announced until after you find those landing spots already. But locking in Jaren Jackson's by far the most important thing that they could do. So having him in long term, having it not be a supermax as well, I think is a really good sign for a really good thing for them. Saves them $60 million over the next 4 years after this one. Huge thing. Finally, they've re-signed Santi Aldama as well. 3 years, $52.5 million. Little bit surprised that the Santi bidding got that high, but is what it is. And then Ty Jerome to a 3-year, $28 million deal, with the last year being a team option. What are your thoughts on the Memphis Grizzlies day so far?
So to start off with Jaren Jackson Jr., the reason that I knew how much he made is because some of us in the Knicks world were trying to figure out a way Nickeil Bridges Jaren Jackson Jr. trade could potentially work. Obviously, that dream died today. One might call it a pipe dream, which I had started to push that narrative. They're like, hey, I get what you're doing. Like, this is good and fine team building and a thought exercise, but knowing what we both know and how Kleiman has felt about Jaren Jackson Jr., I think it was obvious that this was always where it was headed, and him not being Supermax eligible almost made it a foregone conclusion in my mind that now it's just a no-brainer to sign him to the max, and it's not as potentially restrictive 3 or 4 years from now. So that alone, after you trade Des Bane, now doesn't send you into a full reset. I think it's just good, proper team building that a lot of people in Memphis should be excited about. I like Santi Aldama. I like him as a backup. I like him potentially.
He's a third pick.
He's not their backup 3 or 4.
Yeah, no, he'll be like their backup 4.
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
He's a
to your point,
third guy there. Yeah.
I heard third big, and we just had the Capella conversation. I'm thinking, what? Third
Not
center?
that.
My bad. I agree. I like him as a backup. So I think this is the going rate for backups in today's world. I wish, because like you said, I think they've had a fine day, and Ty Jerome, we'll see how replicable his revolutionary season in Cleveland was now that he's not in that Kenny Atkinson system. I like the Memphis coach. I thought he showed, you honestly enlightened me to some of the creativity that he had in the 2 games that they were close against OKC in that first round series. I will just say I wish I could be higher on Memphis than they're a play-in team in the most loaded conference that we've seen in a very long time. I have no issues with their offseason. I think they're building things correctly. The Bane trade, you make it every time, especially if that's what you were getting back. I wish I could be higher on them more so than like, oh, they're like an 8 or 9 seed. And look, we talked about that top 4, by the way, and we didn't even mention Golden State, and Golden State might be closer to a 7 than they are a 5 these days. So I agree. It's a fine day if you're Memphis. If you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan, you should be happy that they're bringing Jaren Jackson Jr. back. That's just like an important thing about team building that I think a lot of people forget when talking about other people's teams. And I wish I could project anything more for you than enjoy the play-in this year. Well, look, the play-in can be something that you enjoy for sure.
Yeah. It's hard to be excited on some level because they've traded away Desmond Bane. I do really respect and appreciate how open and transparent Zach Kleiman has been like throughout this process with Memphis fans. He's just said, look, we didn't think we were that close to the mark this year, and we want to win titles at the end of the day. Our goal is to win a championship in Memphis. We felt like we had to change some things in order to do that. And they get 4 first-round picks for Desmond Bane, 2 of which essentially have now become Cedric Howard. Not just one, but they traded away a 2028 pick that they got from Orlando in that deal to make 1 Cedric Howard, right? To make number 16, essentially Cedric Howard, which is the pick they got in that deal. So they have 2 extra first-round picks to play with now. They've retained Santi Aldama. They are keeping Jaren Jackson, and they have gotten Ty Jerome, who's, I think, a really massive upgrade here over like Luke Kennard and guys like that. The reason that I like Ty Jerome here, and you're right about the Kenny Atkinson system, definitely real reason to worry about if it's going to be as sweet for Ty Jerome. But the Isalo system that he's going to bring and make it look more like it was in Paris this year, as opposed to what it looked like in Memphis from like the Noah LaRoche offense, where it was very movement based and not ball screen based at all. This year is going to be like all ball screen based. That's what Isalo's offense is. And that's the kind of scheme that Ty Jerome thrives in. That's what he's supposed to be playing. That's what he should be in offensively. I think he's going to be really good. Ty Jerome, 52, 44, 87 last year, 12.5 points a game, 3.4 assists, 1.3 turnovers. Now, was really bad in the playoffs. It was tough. It was really, really rough. It was better in the first round. I will note that. Like, it was not nearly as catastrophic, but in the second round, his final 4 games against Indiana, 2 points, 2 points, 7 points, 8 points, 1 for 14, 1 for 8, 2 for 3, 3 for 5. They really had to reduce his minute load as the series went along. But he was quite good in game 1 against Indiana. He was quite good in game 1 against Miami, and was also quite good in game 4 against Miami. So, he had 4 games that were good, and he had 5 games that weren't very good in the playoffs. Maybe it's just going to be hit or miss for him, right? In those biggest moments. The big thing, though, is if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, and I have my thoughts about them continuing to build around Ja Morant, it probably wouldn't be the move that I would do. But if you're going to continue to go down that road, you need a great backup point guard. It can't just be a good one. It has to be a truly great one. And Ty Jerome was one of the best backup point guards in the NBA last season. So this is the exact deal that makes sense to me and this is less than I expected him to get as well. I thought he was going to get 11 or 12 million a year, and he gets basically 9 a year. So really, really good.
So let's play a fun game real quick called Sam, I missed this. Can you inform me? Sam, I missed what happened with Cole Anthony. Can you inform me? Because I'm just like out of the loop on what's going on with Cole Anthony at the moment.
I'm also confused a little bit. So Shams has reported with Cole Anthony, and we'll go by Shams here because I'm sure he got it pretty directly from like the agencies and things like that. So the Memphis Grizzlies and Cole Anthony's reps at Excel Sports are working toward a resolution that allows Memphis to create the necessary cap space to renegotiate and extend Jaren Jackson Jr. while giving Anthony the opportunity to find his next destination. That sounds like a buyout more than a trade. But if I'm Cole Anthony, I don't want to give up anything in a buyout other than like $2 million. That's probably what I'm getting. Cole Anthony will get a minimum for sure, but he's probably not getting more than a minimum, right? So I kind of feel like this has to be a trade in a buyout where like Memphis maybe takes back, I don't know, like Rashawn Holmes from Washington was one idea that an NBA executive threw to me, because he has, I think it's like 250,000 guaranteed. You could guarantee the exact amount that he has to guarantee to make the trade go through. And it's like a little bit less than the 13 that Cole Anthony is supposed to make this year. And that, opens up some money, but it doesn't really open up enough money, I don't think. That's why I'm confused about this whole thing. So I'm not quite as like sold on this whole, like I think there's still a couple of shoes to drop, basically. Like apparently someone said in the comments, Greg Anthony on NBA TV and heavily alluded to the fact that Cole is going to get bought out, and Greg Anthony is Cole Anthony's father, for people who don't know. I would venture that that's the eventual like result here. I just wonder if it's going to be like via Memphis buying him out or somebody else buying him out. It is kind of my thing. Does that help explain your question?
Does. No, it does. There's a lot of teams I could think of that should do the trade and buyout and like get a second for him if you can, just to get the asset. Like a heavily protected second, whatever it is. But like,
sure,
we see teams do this all the time. Like, I will take this bad money and this headache while we don't have anything to play for, and we will grant said player free agency. So there's a lot of teams I could think of that should do that. Brooklyn being one of them, Washington being one of them, to your point. And then there's
the
a lot
of have like real second round picks too to be able to move. So it's not like
there's assets to
like
potentially get from Memphis, to your point. And then there's the other element of there's a lot of teams I think could use a Cole Anthony as their backup point guard. We just talked about Atlanta. Yeah, I'm curious to see how that resolves itself. But thank you for this edition of Sam, I missed this. Can you enlighten me, or whatever we called this game?
Yeah. And look, like the way that you could do that too is, so Jason Crawford in the comments says Grizzlies journalists are thinking they may just stretch Cole Anthony. So you'd be stretching, what is the exact number? I want to get it. 13, I think, over 3 years, 13.1 over 3 years. So that'd be 4.3 or so million, right? 4.3 or so $million, something like that you'd be stretching over the next 3 years. So you'd open up like 9 million in space, which totally tracks. But if you're Memphis and you could do something like you get Rashawn Holmes to Memphis, where you're guaranteeing like, I don't know what the exact number is they'd have to guarantee. Maybe it's like 10, maybe it's like 8. I don't know, because they're right around the salary cap, as opposed, like they're nowhere near the aprons. So you have real flexibility that you can do in the trade. You then would be stretching 8 million over 3 years as opposed to 13 million over 3 years, which would open up another million that you could give to Jaren. Again, I just think that there are a few things to play out here. It could be that it's just Cole Anthony getting stretched. I don't know what the answer is there, though, I guess is my point. I hope that kind of helps a little bit.
It does. Thank you, Sam.
Okay. Let's go to a team that used to have, or a team that signed a player that used to play for the Memphis Grizzlies. Let's go with Jake LaRavia signs for 2 years, $12 million with the Los Angeles Lakers. I will be interested to see if this is like 11.7 million, which would fit nice and tightly into the non-taxpayer mid-level exception. Or I'm sorry, would fit, I always fuck that up, would fit nice and tightly into the taxpayer mid-level exception, or if it's a full 12 million. But Jake LaRavia is now a Los Angeles Laker. And I tweeted this earlier, and the dissonance on this tweet and the juxtaposition of people who have clearly watched Jake LaRavia and people who have not watched Jake LaRavia was very funny to me. So on one side, you had all of the Memphis fans. I tweeted basically before we get into what the reaction was. There's a good shot LaRavia is an upgrade on Dorian Finney-Smith for the Lakers. If not an upgrade, at least very close for a fraction of the price. And the reaction was all of the Memphis fans that like had watched Jake LaRavia for 3 years, right? They were like, yeah, like this is right. He's actually really good on defense. Like, you know, we don't know why people think he's bad. It's just like, you know, kind of funky looking white dude, or like frame wise, not face wise or anything, but like has like a funky frame where he's like kind of a thick dude, right? Really good. Like he, you know, gives a ton of effort. He has great hands. He's pretty good on the ball. He's physical. He's strong. Like it was very funny to see Memphis fans reacting to that versus Lakers fans who felt like the sky was falling and that they had lost Dorian Finney-Smith and that Dorian Finney-Smith is the greatest defender like that they have seen in, you know, yellow and purple and gold for many, many years. My God, yellow. They're going to excoriate me in the comments. Purple and gold for many, many years and everything like that. I think that LaRavia being like 23, 24 years old, I would probably rather bet on Jake LaRavia than 32 and 33-year-old Dorian Finney-Smith. Because again, Dorian just did not move super well last year, I didn't think. And while he is very good at being physical and like bodying up with dudes, I also think LaRavia can do that while also making a little bit more of an impact with his hands, with his ability to anticipate actions in the way that he does. And then on offense, I just think he's a better player, just point blank, than Dorian Finney-Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith is a very stationary shooter, whereas LaRavia is this awesome cutter, awesome playmaker, really passes the ball well, moves off the ball well. He's not a guy that runs off of screens and like is going to fire from three or anything like that, but he's really good at relocating and really smart at being able to make these things work. And yes, absolutely the key thing worth noting here is it shouldn't have been either or. The Lakers should have figured it out with Dorian Finney-Smith and then signed Jake LaRavia to the taxpayer mid-level. 1,000%. That's what this should have been. But I'm just saying that I don't think the Lakers could have done better than Finney-Smith or than LaRavia as a Finney-Smith replacement. Thoughts?
I kind of have to lean on you for this because obviously I trust your evaluation maybe more than anybody that I talk to on a regular basis, to be honest. I want to give a shout out to some of my colleagues at Knicks Film School, but they mostly focus on the Knicks, right? My Benji Ritholtz, Jonathan Macri, DJ Zulo. But as far as the league is concerned, I lean on you and Bryce for guys I don't get the chance to watch unless the Knicks play them. And I saw you coming in hot and heavy on the Twitterverse about LaRavia. And I was like, oh, Sam loves this deal. So I must. Someone who look, the advanced numbers don't pop out, the counting stats don't pop out, but I'm gonna have to lean on you for this. I do think there's to the point that was just made. You could have just signed both and called it. They're not called it an off season, but been okay with your off season. Lakers have a lot of pieces that I'm curious how they all fit next season in particular. Obviously, the big one that's we'll see where he's taking his talents to next, if not staying in LA for the rest of his career. But yeah, my thoughts are that obviously I trust your evaluation without really getting the chance to see LaRavia play that much, Sam.
I think that what I'm most intrigued by, I guess, with LaRavia is it should be a really good fit offensively with what JJ Redick likes to operate with, right? I think that the way that he moves off the ball, it's not just like we're going to run him off of like 3 pin downs for him to get open from 3, right? I think LaRavia's movement tends to be more like instinctual, like grab and go give and go passes or relocations from the corner up to the wing where he knows that Luka is going to be able to find him on like a drive and drift, right? Or from the wing to the corner as a drift, right? Like, I just think there are a lot of different ways that he fits with what they're trying to do on offense around Luka. And it's not that Finney-Smith didn't work. I just think that the passing, the cutting, the similar level shooting, it's a little bit more dynamic than what Finney-Smith brought to the table.
Is there a player comp that you would go to with LaRavia?
It's funk. He's a funky player is kind of the thing. Like,
so I'll just say this real quick. When you were talking about like perception not being reality with looking at a funky white guy and assuming automatically he's not great at defense, I happen to think Sam Hauser is like a serviceable defender on ball.
Sure.
So that's
Sam's
the place I went to.
He's more of like a sniper, Hauser. Like, Hauser is more of your relocate behind the 3-point line, fire from distance off of open threes, and you can run him off of real actions. With LaRavia, it's more like cutting, moving both inside the arc, outside the arc. It needs to be better as a finisher, first and foremost. Like that's where the big lift is going to be if he lifts his game. But like, he's also not like a crazy volume 3-point shooter because he does like to operate like cutting back door, 45 cutting from the rim or from the wing, right? Like he's just, there isn't really there's not a name that comes to mind, weirdly. He is a funky player, but he's a valuable player, I think.
Yeah.
And he can really pass it is the thing. Like, can really, really pass it.
Well, we'll see how he does in LA.
Yeah, I think it's a good fit. I think it is genuinely a good fit. And if you told me he's more valuable over the next 2 years than DFS is over the next 2 years, that would not blow my mind at all. And he's going to make half as much as DFS.
You heard it here first, folks.
And again, they should have both completely. But if the question was LaRavia and like DeAndre Ayton or something, which by the way, I'm like, I kind of want to wait to see where Ayton signs. Can you imagine JJ Redick coaching DeAndre Ayton?
Lose his mind. Yeah.
Gonna absolutely lose his mind if it happens. Gonna lose his mind every night. But maybe that's what DeAndre needs. Like, I don't know.
These are there are certain circumstances with the Lakers, whether it be the potential for JJ Redick to coach DeAndre Ayton, or I can't even think of a second example, but where I want to go back through time of the JJ Redick pod, not only to see has he interviewed said player and then gotten a takeaway of a player. I want to know, has he ever had a thought about Ayton and some of his habits or lack thereof that may come in to play, that he potentially went into the front office and said, no, thank you. Although it does seem like that's where this is headed, that DeAndre Ayton's going to go to the Lakers. So
would be quite funny. The other signing, there are a couple more signings that I really liked.
Let's do it.
Brook Lopez to the Clippers, to me, is such a good bet. 2 years, $18 million. It's such a good bet on a player being in the wrong situation last year versus getting hopefully to the right situation this year. Because Brook Lopez obviously has his limitations now. Movement being one of them. Being able to move his feet is not ideal with Brook Lopez. but he's elite with angles. He's enormous. He can really protect the rim, and he's a great communicator in defensive coverages. Now, replace Taurean Prince, Damian Lillard, Gary Trent, etc., Kevin Porter Jr., everybody like that, with Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr., Kawhi Leonard, etc. These guys that are awesome at getting around screens, and let them kind of go to town and fight around while he's just cutting off angles and forcing guys into mid-range contested jumpers from behind. Brook Lopez is much more set up for success now in Los Angeles than he was last year in Milwaukee. I think that he is going to be a really great backup center for the Los Angeles Clippers. I think this is a home run for the Clippers to get him.
I liked it when I saw it. I'll say that much. I mean, I'm curious what he still, not necessarily what he still has. I don't want to imply that the washed word. I don't think he's anywhere near that yet. And if he's able to be the rim protector that he's consistently been for, I mean, he's not going to be asked to play 31 minutes anymore. So even more to the point where
I would expect 18, right? Because
which
Zubac
is honestly perfect for him at this point in his career, you know. I guess my larger thought, we didn't really talk about them either when we were talking about the hierarchy of the Western Conference, which this is just like going to be a thing when we talk about the West going forward, that it's like, oh, I love them, but they're in the Western Conference. Like we just talked about Memphis. I like what they did today, but they're in the Western Conference. We're talking about a team in the Clippers that at certain points last year, I wondered if they could win the Western Conference. I like what they've done so far this offseason. I like the Brook Lopez addition. It doesn't move the needle necessarily into that top four, but unfortunately I have to evaluate them on where I think they fall in the conference. And it's like the ceiling is maybe a 3 or 4 seed. And like, I don't think they win a series against, I don't think they win a series against Denver again. I don't think they win a series against OKC. So that it's just, it's a tough thing to evaluate, but in the vacuum of the Brook Lopez signing, I agree with you that putting him as now a backup, which is probably what he's more suited to be at this point in his career, was an outstanding signing for the Clippers.
I just think about watching so many clips with the Bucks last year where Brook Lopez would be like yelling out ice, 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 and the defender would let the offensive player get to the middle, and it'd just be like, what? He would just be like, I can't move well enough to turn my hips and like get all the way back. We need to be able to keep the guy to one side of the court, which is what the strategy is. Like the number of times where Brook Lopez would just have his hands up, like his hands like out at his sides, melting down on the court, not even melting down, like honestly, like rightfully indignant that his perimeter defenders couldn't execute keeping a player to one side of the court. Like, you don't even have to keep him in front. Just keep him to the side of the court and it's okay. And they couldn't even do it. Like it was, maybe I'm overestimating a little bit what Brook Lopez is capable of at this point. But I think that like if you played him in bench units and you told me Chris Dunn is chasing dudes over the top and Derek Jones Jr. is chasing dudes over the top in bench units, and that's how they operate, man, I think it just works so much better for him, and I think he'll have a real chance to thrive.
You said it, second units. There were portions last year where Batum was playing center for them, and
totally.
Look, there are going to be moments also where this ends up being a depth piece for them. You know, there may be portions of the season where he's not in the rotation. There may be portions of the season with the beacon of health that Kawhi has been for most of his career, where maybe I don't think you start him and Zubac together, but having him in the rotation is that much more essential because he's playing 25 minutes for a certain stretch. Great landing spot, like you said, for the Clippers. It's just it's a ceiling conversation for me, or a question for me. Were you shocked he didn't go to the Lakers? Because that I thought was where this was headed for most of today.
So I'd kind of been told like he wants to head back out. Like he's from LA, right? So
Right.
like my whole thing was that he would end up at one of those two. I don't know that I guess I like thought the Lakers because they needed a big more, right? But I think the Clippers is just a better situation for him at the end of the day. Like that Lakers, like we talk about the Lakers perimeter defense all the time. It's not like they're going to be drastically better than Milwaukee was. I think it just is better for Brook probably to end up with the Clippers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next deal we have to talk about is another center. Luke Kornet is going to the San Antonio Spurs. Luke Kornet, 4 years, $41 million. It's a lot of money for Luke Kornet, but I can't say it's not worth it. It's kind of the thing. I will say, I still very strongly believe in Wemby needs to be the 5. Like it works so much better for them when he's the 5 because you are spacing the big on the court out and you're involving him in primary actions more consistently when he's the center because he's either going to be right at the rim because the big is right at the rim in the dunker spot or something like that, and Wemby's allowed to stay in that area, or he's just involved in the ball screen, is involved in the primary action of the screen defensively, right? And you want Wemby involved in as much defensively as he can be involved in. If it's Kornet at the center position and Wemby at the 4 or something like that, right? There are teams that will just be able to put a shooter in the corner on Wemby, and there are 4 shooters around a big, and then Wemby's in the corner and he's dealing with the shooter and he's kind of out of the play, right? So I think a big needs to be more of a 5 to 10 minute a game complement next to Wemby as opposed to like a player that like plays with Wemby, or he's got to be able to shoot like in a real way, right? Like there are a few different options you can bring out to the table, but like Kornet is fine to me, but he's like a backup 15, 20 minute a game guy that maybe plays occasionally with Vic. He's not a like starting center, you know, you move Vic to the 4 guy. And that's totally okay. Like at this price point, it's a good deal. I think Kornet's an awesome basketball player. Everybody I've ever spoken to about Luke Kornet will wax poetically about how awesome of a human being Luke Kornet is. Like incredibly funny, dry sense of humor, like really, really sharp human being, like who went to Vanderbilt and things like that. Like it seems like a perfect culture fit for San Antonio as they try to build this thing out. And it's a good fit as a backup big. This is totally fine for me. This is a smart deal for the San Antonio Spurs.
So we had the exact same reaction that it's a fine deal, a good deal. And I will say it was a bit surprising. I thought he would end up back in Boston for a similar number too. It seemed like some of the reporting around the Celtics was that they'd bring him back.
I'll be honest. I thought it was even going to be less than that. Like,
okay.
Who knows, right? What went on? I was told Luke Kornet really loved Boston. I don't know what the negotiations were like. I don't know if they told him like, look, we just can't give you what you're worth here. Unfortunately, like we're trying to get below the tax this year. I think there are a number of different things that could have happened, and I don't really want to speculate. But what I do know is that Luke Kornet like genuinely loved Boston.
Well, that'll lead to a question in just a second about them and avoiding the tax. But I think he's one of the best backup centers in the sport. And look, so without looking, he just averaged his career high in minutes per game this past season.
Sure.
What number do you think that is?
I would have guessed like 18.
You're good. 18.6 that he averaged this season.
I was going to say 17 to 18 would have been my number. Yeah.
So to your point about this isn't someone that you play with Wemby a lot, maybe in certain matchups, maybe 2-3 minutes a game. This is how we saw him used in the playoffs. Like there were moments where they went double big with him next to Porzingis or him next to Horford, or they went with him as just the primary center next to Tatum, next to Brown, and just instead of going 5 out, you have a real rim protector. My goodness, Phil Jackson is smiling somewhere in Montana. Former Knicks draft pick Luke Kornet. The fact that Luke Kornet ends up being a $40 million center on a team that is interesting at this point in his career, what he's turned into as a rim protector is a credit to him. For there was moments where I wondered if he'd still be in the league, and now here he is, an important piece, a coveted piece during a free agency period. So I co-sign the how he's used, which is as a 15 to 25 minute backup center. I agree with you about the Wemby usage too. The as many minutes as you can with Wemby as your center should be the goal in San Antonio, which is how I think he'll be implemented too.
And here's the other thing with Kornet too. Kornet is also like, he turns 30 this month, right? Like he's not as young as what you would think. Like he didn't just pop up this year, and he's 25 years old and there's this whole big room for improvement. You know what I mean? He turns 30 in 15 days, right? He's a really useful player. He played 1,300 minutes for the first time this year. Shout out to him for getting $40 million. I love it. Like, it's an amazing story, but you probably want him in that limited role, right? He's not going to be a guy like if truly, if I was the Lakers, I would have tried to have done it for sure. I would have absolutely tried to have done it, but it probably makes more sense for him to be like a backup at the end of the day. It probably makes more sense for him to be around.
Yeah.
In that way, as opposed to what he is now. I had totally forgotten that Phil Jackson drafted him.
Yes, sir. Former Phil Jackson draft pick. Yes.
Is that the second best ever Phil Jackson draft pick? Because he drafted KP, right?
Yes. There's not a long list of great Phil Jackson draft picks. Shout out to one French prince, Frank Ntilikina, and his time in New York. I think he has to be. Although Damian Dotson, there was a moment where I thought he was up there.
He might have drafted Mitch too.
No, he didn't. That was the first Scott Perry draft pick because it came after. No, excuse me. It's the second Scott Perry draft pick because the summer that Scott Perry took over with Steve Mills, they traded Carmelo Anthony and got a second round pick back they used on Mitchell Robinson. Do you know who they took with the 9th overall pick for the first Scott Perry draft pick?
The first Scott Perry draft pick.
Yeah.
That Kevin Knox's year?
That would be Kevin Knox.
Yeah.
Who was a 1 pick ahead of Nickeil Bridges, 2 picks ahead of Miles Bridges, 3 picks ahead of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and 4 picks ahead of Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah, and 5 picks ahead of Jerome Robinson.
There's a lot of good picks in that draft that many a Knicks fan will point to and say, as much as people are upset about like just missing out on Steph Curry or just missing out on Donovan Mitchell, it's that draft in particular that I point to. And it's like, man, you needed a wing, and all these wings, like Nickeil Bridges was literally the next pick, you know, and instead the upside, like they went and took Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's teammate in that draft that year. Like they watched all that film of SGA and said, let's get his teammate, you know? So
I can't remember who I had higher. I was not a Knox guy. I remember that. I think I had Shai higher than Knox that year, but not like they were close, but I think I had Shai higher by like a spot or two.
Yeah.
Okay. Win for the San Antonio Spurs to end up with Luke Kornet. I've been kind of holding on the Pistons here for a minute because I want to see if this thing that they're trying to do gets done. Let's maybe hold on LeVert for a second here and maybe buzz speed round through some of these other things that we've gotten tonight.
Let's do it.
I mentioned this to you earlier. The deal that I've gotten the most like, what is going on here? Question mark texts from front offices so far is Kevon Looney, 216 to the Pelicans. Another big for a team with Troy Weaver in the front office in a significant position. It's amazing. Kevon Looney, 2 for 16. I talked to people that thought he was going to get like he would be lucky to get the taxpayer mid-level.
I like Kevon Looney for what it's worth. I like him as a backup too.
Yep, so do I.
I hate that he's in New Orleans at the moment, but I guess when you're given an offer you can't refuse, you take it. I'm here for the jokes, as I usually am. It's a life philosophy. I'm here for the jokes, and you're the first person I thought of when I saw the Kevon Looney signing with New Orleans.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible that they signed him. I truly can't believe it. Like their third best defender now, second best defender on the team. So in that respect, it helps. It genuinely helps. D'Angelo Russell, 2 years, $13 million with a player option in year 2 to be the Dallas Mavericks point guard this year. Home run. Like, makes sense for everybody. He gets to have a bunch of usage for this year. The Mavs get their point guard. It's a cheap deal. Makes total sense.
Especially if the 3-point volume comes back. Back specifically the catch and shoot 3-point volume and percentage. When he was in LA, that's like the thing that made him so valuable. And then this year, that number fell off a cliff. I like their look. We will continue to get said jokes out of over the fact that this is the same front office that traded Luka Doncic, but I can't pretend like I don't look at their depth chart and look at their top 10 and say, there's a lot of pieces on this team that I really like, while recognizing that like you could have, outside of Cooper, because you wouldn't have been as bad to get Cooper flag, you probably still could have had a good team with Luka Doncic anyway. But they have landed on a solid team. I think before we leave tonight, I'm going to make you rank the top 10 teams in the Western Conference, because I'm at a loss for where to put Dallas. Because you could tell me, like, yes, home run, D'Angelo Russell. I have no idea how good I think the Dallas Mavericks are next season.
It's real tough.
Yeah.
It's a real tough spot in the West. The Jones boys, Tre Jones, 3 years, $24 million in Chicago. Tyus Jones, 1 year, $7 million in Orlando. 2 deals that make sense to me. I don't know if I would have gone 3 years on Tre Jones. I haven't seen if there's like a protection in that deal at all in the 3rd year. I would guess that there might be, to be honest with you, but that's a pure guess. That's not me. Like, I don't have any info on that. Yeah, like, makes total sense.
Yeah, same here. Not much to add.
Yeah, Orlando needed another ball handler, and yeah, like,
have for a while
Bulls,
too. No disrespect. Like, he replaces the Cole Anthony role, as like
totally
the primary ball handler for a team that's not going to play a primary ball handler much, because they like to run without a traditional point guard in their starting fives. So, yeah, not much to add. Liked it for both.
Yep. Casey Johnson does not have anything on the Bulls deal being, like a first or a non-first, like, no, I'm sorry. Like a 3rd year player option, team option, whatever it would be, like something, we have no info there. It's a 3 year, $24 million deal as of right now. Who knows what the, protections on it, non-protections are, who's to say? Okay. Taurean Prince and Gary Trent going back to Milwaukee. Sure. I don't have like a whole lot to add about that beyond sure.
I said my piece. This does not scream see Giannis. Like, it just doesn't speak to a team that's making. Now, maybe there's like the moves aren't out there, and maybe this leads to a conversation. Maybe Giannis is thinking the same thing. I just largely running it back without Brook Lopez and without Dame factored in next year doesn't speak to, and there's not like a young player that they were taking minutes from that you can now say, oh, they're setting up for this instead. I have a lot of questions about Milwaukee, to where I wonder if there's more to come from what's going on there.
I'm just not sure what else they can do is kind of the problem, though. I don't know what their other options are right now. to be able to like really get anything done. The interesting thing here for me is I'm like trying to do math in my head to see if like Gary Trent at 7.5, I feel like probably has to be part of their mid-level. I don't think that is a non-Bird signing. It's close though. Like, but I think it's like a little bit too high for it to be that. So I don't know. Maybe we'll get like a little bit more detail and they still have some more optionality than what we think they have. But I'm like kind of skeptical of that at this point. Maybe I'll check Bobby to see if he has some sort of information on that. But my read is that that's probably a little bit higher than what that number is. Yeah, and look, like Torian Prince, Gary Trent, shooters at the very least, and then Kevin Porter Jr. back to 11. Sure, whatever, he'll be the point guard. But again, this is a team that just didn't have a lot of flexibility, didn't have a lot of optionality. We'll see what Giannis decides. I have no insight into that whatsoever. Luka Garza to be Boston's part of Boston center rotation, maybe the starting center, it feels like right now. Look, I'd been told that Boston was offering around a big role for a minimum player, basically at the center position. And it seems like Luka Garza took them up on it. I love it. Good for Luka Garza. He's worked his balls off to stay in the NBA. Shout out to him. Deserved opportunity. He's definitely going to play, and he definitely fires threes. Like anytime he's in games, like that dude loves to chuck them up. So he fits their offensive scheme too.
Where do you think Horford ends up?
Don't have an answer. If I was him, I'd be looking at Denver. I would be looking at, I mean, the team that would be really fun. Look, I don't know if Al Horford is willing to do a minimum. I don't know what his priorities are. Like, you know, is he looking at retirement? Like I've genuinely just no idea what Al Horford is looking at in his life. What I do know is Al Horford's made $300 million in his career, right? So like, if he's looking at a minimum, nobody should begrudge him. If not, Golden State makes sense. The Cavs make sense. Denver makes sense. Like there are so many different, the Knicks make sense. Like, sure, great. I'm all for it. But, you know, a lot of players could use Al Horford as like a 15 to 20 minute a game guy for sure.
So it's interesting in all the teams you just said, you didn't say Boston. So not that you're projecting how he's going to leave the Celtics, but that's where I've landed. I don't think he's going to go back to Boston.
I just think it'd be done by now.
Yeah.
If he was, you know what I mean? Like they've been able to negotiate with him for days at this point, and he's not back there. So what are they offering? You know what it says to me, they're not offering more than the mini mid-level at least. So maybe he wants to be a guy that's like contending for a title. I just don't know. Like my answer to all of this with him is I just don't have the answer on what Al Horford wants. So I can't tell you what he's going to do or not do.
Same. Yeah.
So Bobby Marks is saying here on the Trent deal that it is the non-Bird exception. It's 120% above the minimum for Trent. So they will have flexibility on the Trent deal at least. So yeah, sure. Okay. So they can go out and still sign somebody. Well, no, they used the mini mid-level on Porter, didn't they? Because he's getting like 5.5. So no, they don't have a lot of flexibility at this point.
Yeah.
I guess that could be Porter could be the biannual, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. There are some things moving around here still. That's the thing with doing these like in the middle of the off season and like the first night, right? Is a lot of these teams structure their deals. Like we're going to talk about the Karis LeVert thing, right? So let's just move to the Karis LeVert piece of it. I've been waiting I think the LeVert deal is great for Detroit. It's just like I've been kind of waiting for it to see if another shoe drops because there's been some reporting. The way that the Pistons structured the LeVert deal is that it fits both into their non-taxpayer mid-level, which is 14.5 million or 14.7, whatever it is, or they can use it into their cap space, right? By giving him that number, they keep the options open to be able to do things. So as we talk about these things and we talk about like, okay, how is Houston going to get Clint Capella? The answer is that it depends who else says yes to them. It depends on what else they're trying to accomplish. It depends on what does Atlanta want in a sign and trade? Do they, or are we going to try and expand this deal into being a 7-team deal with the Kevin Durant deal included and the Nickeil Alexander-Walker deal included and the Clint Capella deal included? And do we loop the Lakers in with Dorian Finney-Smith? You know what I mean? Like there are just 45 different ways to get things done this time of year. So we're all trying to figure it out. You know, we're all trying to manage this a little bit. And it's good to have the experts like Bobby and Hollinger and those guys around who are, I'm able to ask and just be like, hey, what the fuck's going on? Like, I am vaguely good with CBA stuff. I am like nowhere near expert level like John and those guys are. Like I can talk through some things. I can't like, and I know the basics like at a high level. Like I'm beyond the basic level, but like not into the deep weeds, you know, like some people are that like work for teams, and that John literally did this for years for a team. Bobby did this for years for a team. Like, you know, I'm above the layman for sure. And, you know, certainly on the level with like most NBA executives that aren't cap people, but the cap people are the ones that are crazy with it and like that know how to make all of this work. You know what I mean? So
real quick, this is where I'll shout out my buddy Jeremy Cohen over at Knicks Film School, our capologist. He's my Jeremy, what is this? Like he's the guy I go to for those questions too. So yes, we all need a cap guy that we can go to.
We do genuinely need a cap guy. But I say all this to say that there are always so many moving parts throughout the year on these things that we just don't always know. The Caris LeVert deal, I've been waiting to talk about. It's a great deal. It's a home run for the Pistons, for them to be able to pivot off of the Malik Beasley thing, where Beasley, it seems like, is going through some sort of investigation from the U.S. government involving gambling. You move off of Beasley, you sign Caris LeVert. They're very different players, obviously, with Caris LeVert and Malik Beasley. But Beasley being able to handle the ball, or I'm sorry, LeVert being able to handle the ball, being able to attack in second units. I love the deal. I think it's smart.
I like him as a. So it's funny you say pivot off of Malik Beasley, because I like Caris LeVert if the Beasley stuff works itself out and they're able to bring him back. This is where I would need to go to Jeremy and ask, like, what is this? Does this officially take them out of the sweepstakes or any possibility of bringing Beasley back?
So my read, and this is backed up by Jake Fisher's reporting here that he's brought up. My read is that they are trying to do Malik Monk and Duncan Robinson, or one or the other, right? Dennis Schroeder, it seems like, is going to Sacramento. That seems done in some way, shape, or form. Malik Monk, you can theoretically, and this is something we brought up in the offseason preview for the Pistons, instead of doing Malik Monk, we actually might have brought up Malik Monk. We brought him up yesterday for sure for the Pistons. I know that. But we brought up PJ Washington for Dennis Schroeder previously. It would be a similar concept here, where you sign and trade Dennis Schroeder into Sacramento, Malik Monk over to Detroit, and I'm sure Detroit would give up some sort of pick capital to be able to get Malik Monk. Probably not like crazy pick capital, but something, right? That would allow them to stay over the cap. You then do, I'm just trying to think through how you would kind of land this plane if you also want to do Duncan Robinson. You do Schroeder for Monk. You do LeVert into the mid-level, and then you do Duncan maybe for like Fontecchio or something to Miami. Like something along those lines could track. And then you could do Duncan for like 220, something in that ballpark. I'm just kind of spitballing though. Like none of this is done. None of this is official or finalized in any way. I'm just kind of trying to come up with the order of operations on how you do this. But if the Pistons do want Malik Monk, and I think that'd be Bryce and I talked about that last night, the perfect guy to play with Cade Cunningham. Like, my God, like that is the exact player you want with Cade Cunningham. I don't know if you need both Malik Monk and Karis LeVert and Jaden Ivey, but if you want to do Malik Monk and Duncan Robinson, those are deals that make sense to me across the board.
And I
guess if you're doing Duncan, it would have to be a 3-year deal for like 30 million or something. Because if you're going to sign and trade him in, you have to do 3 years.
Tim Hardaway Jr. is a free agent, right?
Tim Hardaway Jr. is indeed a free agent. That is accurate.
So, I guess just to close the loop, my reaction to the Karis LeVert signing had nothing to do with the Malik Beasley and the wing, the 2-guard rotation, right? It was just this is an upgrade over Tim Hardaway Jr. I agree with you. If they could find a way to get Malik Monk to play next to, whether it be a sign and trade in the Schroeder deal, I guess that would be like the only way it could happen is a sign and trade with the Schroeder deal, with one going to Sacramento, one coming back to Detroit. Or if just Schroeder goes and you get Duncan Robinson in there, and then you have another sharpshooter in there that leaves something to be desired defensively. I have to apply the Knicks prism and perspective here of I was just so happy whenever they didn't have their best spacing on the floor around Cade because it made him much easier to guard. And if you're telling me you can upgrade Beasley, which in my opinion, upgrading Malik Monk is an upgrade over Malik Beasley, that makes the Pistons significantly scarier. And I also think Karis LeVert is an upgrade over Tim Hardaway Jr. So it's not flashy, but I think these are margin moves you make when you're a young team, and you're not trying to make the all-in move just yet. It's good. It's good, and we'll see if there's even more good to come from the Detroit Pistons.
The other thing that I will note here is I'm just kind of looking through some things here to see if we've got any word on like the Schroeder deal or anything like that. But again, if you're going to do Dennis Schroeder to Sacramento, that means that it has to be a 3-year deal if he's involved in a sign and trade. And Jake Fisher is saying here that the deal is expected to be 2 years, not 3. So Fred Katz, legend, icon, friend of both of ours, person that we love dearly.
Yankee fan,
but we do allow him that grace.
We forgive people for their shortcomings. Exactly.
Yeah. What can you do? Matthew is reporting that Dennis Schroeder has agreed to a contract with the Sacramento Kings. So there's something there, but again, if they're going to rope this into a sign and trade, it can't be multiple years, or it can't be 2 years. It has to be 3 years. Now, maybe it's just you throw on like a mutual option at the end and make it a 3-year deal. And it's like a non-guarantee with a player option or something like that, just to make this all work. But you can kind of like make this, you can figure all this out. Fred, help us as always. We need Fred's insight into all things, because Fred is the best. But let's see here. Yeah, he has the Kevin Porter deal. It's 10.5 million, not 11. He has it as the biannual exception. So the Bucks do still have their mini mid-level then, is my read. So they have a little bit more flexibility than what we thought, which is good.
Gotcha.
And now we've got the Pistons, hopefully, figuring out a way to do Malik Monk, Karis LeVert, and Duncan Robinson, which is just a lot of offense. A lot of shooting. By the way, like Karis LeVert, the book on Karis LeVert throughout the course of his career has been not really a shooter, right? Well, what do you think Karis LeVert has shot over the last 3 years? Over 940 3-point attempts over his career. Over the last 3 years.
Percentage, you're saying?
Percentage, that is correct.
37, 38, around there?
36.5.
Ah.
Can kind of hit a three a little bit now, which is big. And it's funny. Do you know what Karis LeVert shot at Michigan in college from three?
Was that 36?
Karis LeVert drilled 40.1% of his threes in college at Michigan. He hit over 40% from three in all 3 of his final 3 seasons. Him not being able to shoot in the NBA is one of the strangest developments I have seen from, or like, regressions really from a shooter that I've seen since I've been doing this. And I've been doing this for a decade now. It is somewhat baffling to me that he became a non-shooter somehow in the NBA.
I have an update, by the way, Mr. Vecenie.
Is it from our friend Fred?
I cannot confirm nor deny where my update is coming from, but I can say that it does appear that they are trying to work out a sign and trade. Also, Jake Fisher, an emerging option for the Pistons, sources say, is Detroit trading for Kings guard Malik Monk. Sounds like there's a chance. Okay, so this is what we were alluding to, that this could be a sign and trade, could turn into a sign and trade. So what we're saying is something that is apparently something that is an emerging option. And I will now also credit Fred Katz, who said, yes, that's what they're trying to do. I texted him. I used him like our Jeremy or our Hollinger. It was like, Fred, help, or Matthew, help. And now we have clarification.
Matthew, help.
Yes.
Oh, Fred, we love you dearly.
Yes.
Okay. That's everything that has happened tonight, I believe.
So let's play a quick game.
If I missed anything.
We're going to do one quick game. This is how we're going to end tonight. Let's rank the Western Conference as of right now. Okay. We'll do it rapid fire. So let's start at the bottom, actually, because I think that's the easiest. Who's 15?
Yeah,
Utah. I have Utah there too. Who's 14?
I'll
just go on record. I have the New Orleans Pelicans 14.
It's either them or Sacramento for me. I will hear out either team. They are 13 and 14 in some order.
Okay. I would have Phoenix 13, but I would hear out. They have Dylan Brooks. They have too much talent to not be ahead of them. DeRozan creates a floor in my mind of not a very high ceiling, but a 33, 34 win floor. Now, that may be good enough to be the 13th team in the conference, but all right, we said rapid fire. Is Phoenix and Sacramento your next 2 teams?
Yeah, I have Phoenix ahead of these guys, but yeah.
Okay. What about Portland?
I would have Portland, I think, at 11 right now.
So we have the same bottom 5. Now it gets fun. Who's 10?
I think for next year specifically, it is probably Dallas.
I would agree with that. Dallas 10. Who's 9?
I think that I love Dallas moving forward, but I think for next year specifically, without Kyrie, with D'Angelo Russell, I think I would do that. At number 9, I would probably go Memphis in the assumption that Ja will miss time.
I would say Memphis too. Where I end up putting San Antonio is what I'm wrestling with right now. Because you could tell me they finished 10th. You could tell me they finish higher. but I would also put Memphis at this spot at 9.
Yeah. At number 8, then
Mm-hmm.
I think I would go. The Lakers right now.
So you would have San Antonio over the Lakers right now.
They're the next two. I don't know. They're the next two to me.
For what it's worth, I have them
probably
as my
San
next two
Antonio.
also. Yeah.
San Antonio 8, Lakers 7. Probably is right. I mean, look, like it's hard because I'm trying to project like injuries a little bit in my head, right? And I do have to remember the fact that like Wemby has not played, a wildly full season of basketball yet. Like he played 71 games his first year, which is pretty full, I guess, but 46 this year. And maybe the injury was like a little bit of a fluke thing. It's a freaking blood clot. Like who knows? Like I'm sure he's going to be fine. They're 8 and 7 for me. They're that ballpark. We can continue.
It's a juicy playing game, by the way.
It's amazing.
Number 6.
I would go probably with the Golden State Warriors at 6.
Right. We may be chalk here the same because I would have the Warriors 6 too. And number 5, you would have.
I would have the Clippers at 5.
As would I. And then 4, I believe we said
Minnesota.
And then 3.
Right now, for the regular season, I would have Denver at 3 because we still don't have what they're doing with their mid-level yet. That could change. They're close enough with Houston to where that could change.
And then so Houston 2 and then OKC 1.
Correct.
I would go Denver 2, Houston 3. It's a Jokic pick for me. But
Totally fine.
I think those we're closer than I think as much shuffling as might have been done in the conference after a one day. And really a couple weeks. I saw some people, I may have been one of them, that was like all this about a ton of movement in the sport and how crazy the free agency movement is going to be. And your biggest move is Michael Porter Jr. I think if you look at the whole of the last 3 weeks and start it at the Des Bane trade, if all of this happened today at 6:30 Eastern, then it would be one of the craziest movement.
It was just very spread out.
Yeah. It happened over the course of 14 days.
But you know what? Like this is how it happens most years, right? Like maybe it's a little bit more condensed into 8 days, like the draft and then free agency, right? But because the draft was so close to free agency this year, teams had to kind of like move their timeline up a little bit. It doesn't always happen all at once. And this free agency class is not particularly strong, right? So we'll see. We'll see what it is. By the way, Michael Scotto, to answer your Al Horford question, Al Horford has received interest from the Boston Celtics, Golden State Warriors, New York Knicks, Denver Nuggets, Cleveland Cavaliers, Los Angeles Lakers. That makes sense. That makes total sense.
I agree.
So, yeah, I'm fascinated to see this and where this all goes. We will be going live tomorrow in all likelihood because there will be more moves that happen. I will be making Andrew pull videos and talk about the ways that these things get done and figuring out where all of these teams settle at some point. So we will have a July 1st stream in all likelihood. If we don't, there will be one on the 2nd. I can almost guarantee that. I get to go see F1 tonight on a crazy big screen. That I am pumped for. You've been active on Letterboxd.
I have
the last couple of days.
Been trying. My wife was out of town, so
you've caught up on things.
I've caught up on things. We're overdue for a rec center in the not too distant future. I think I saw my second favorite movie of the year last night.
Oh God, what was it?
EFIS, the baseball movie.
Still haven't watched it yet.
It is right in the heartstrings. So when you see it, like I said, we're overdue once all the basketball is settled and all the offseason stuff has happened for a rec center sometime after summer league.
I think that's the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And after summer league, when we have that conversation, we will also have seen F1, also have seen Superman, also have seen, I'm excited for Jurassic because Jurassic Park's my favorite movie ever. And there's another Jurassic movie coming out, and I can't wait to go turn my brain off and watch it this 4th of July weekend. So there's a lot of big movies too.
I weirdly started doing like sports movies and like older movies during the draft cycle. And I'm like catching up on some reading as well. And now I'm like running through Blu-rays. So like yesterday I watched the first part of Steven Soderbergh's movie on Che Guevara, Che. I'll watch the second one later today, probably before I go see F1. And, I'm just kind of catching up. You know what I mean? We're just kind of catching up, and we'll roll through. The thing that I'm waiting for is next week at this, literally like during this exact time next week, I will be on a 14-hour flight to the US. So I have a big, long list of movies that I will be watching from 2025. I have Phoenician Scheme, Final Destination, like Ugly Stepsisters on this list, like A Nice Indian Boy is on this list. Like I'm excited to dig through all of these things.
I look forward to hearing your thoughts on Final Destination Bloodlines. It's a franchise that's only gotten more and more ridiculous, and one that I've
heard this one is good.
I enjoyed it. Ironically, the new Oz Perkins movie, The Monkey, also of that same universe, man.
You liked that more than I did. That was a little bit tedious for me.
Again, it comes from expectations. I didn't love Longlegs, but recognized it was impeccable filmmaking. And in this, I was expecting like impeccable filmmaking, and I got a Final Destination movie. So I was able to like, oh, this was fun. This was way more fun than I expected to have. Shout out Theo James.
That's very funny. Someone asked, did you see Presence?
Yes.
I have seen Presence. I enjoyed Presence quite a bit, actually.
Did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Black Bag's better, but I like this.
Yeah, I thought they were pretty close, honestly. I was a little bit lower on Black Bag, a little bit higher on Presence than what the consensus is, I think, but I did enjoy Black Bag a little bit more probably than Presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we're at. We have to do super chats before we go, though.
Oh, we do. Let's do it.
Okay. So Sumo Pockets 34, shout out to you for the super chat. What are the chances that Charlotte finally moves Miles Bridges? He could use a new start. I mean, look, like we're not going to really talk a whole lot about Miles Bridges on the show. We're not a huge Miles Bridges show for obvious reasons. I would absolutely be in favor of the Charlotte Hornets front office moving Miles Bridges. We'll go with that. From Danny Reich Jr. Are teams really loading up with size for the Mavs in Denver, not the Thunder? I think that there is always a desire for teams to load up on size to deal with Jokic. I think we saw in the playoffs this year how dangerous that dude is. Like just straight up against this Oklahoma City team. And Oklahoma City really only has 1 year left of this like supersized front line with Hartenstein and Chet. Absolutely. I think that more than anything, it's not that they're loading up to go big or loading up to go small. It's that teams are loading up to be flexible right now. Don't you think?
I don't think anybody's loading up for Dallas, personally. I don't think anybody's offseason plans are like, we got to do this because Dallas. I think we just watched against the Thunder that going small might actually be a good option for you. Like what the Pacers were able to do and creating a tempo and a rhythm that had OKC all out of sorts. And look, we also saw with Denver, there are multiple ways you can attack OKC. You can attack them with physicality and with your bigs, or you could attack them with pace and space to an extent. So I maintain it's why he was my MVP pick. The unstoppable thing in the conference is Jokic. So I don't fault teams if they're like, we have to have a Jokic calculation, you know?
I think that's right. From Cameron T, it's either the third or LLL. Completely unrelated, but if the Spurs sign Gershon Yabusele, the Spurs have to trade Harrison Barnes, Keldon Johnson, and Sohan at that point, right? I don't think that's trade all of them, but I think that they'll probably look into myriad options involving them, right? So you just kind of look at what they'd have on their roster and what their financial situation would be. They would be at, I think, like 198 or so in money. It looks like for 11 players is what I'm seeing here. Because that also includes, it'd be a little bit less than that. Because that includes some of their cap holds as well. They're at 156 in terms of what they've actually had, plus, what is this, 17 million. So 156 plus 17. So they're 173, 174. The second apron or the first apron is 195. They'd be below the tax still. I think they can just keep these guys and it's fine, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think I think they can get flexible and try and move some of these guys for Lowry Markkanen, but they don't have to do any of these things, I don't think.
I agree. I look, I have no idea why Lauri Markkanen is still in Utah personally, but I also recognize someone's got to get the point, someone's got to get the rebound. So maybe that's why.
Yeah. Is John Collins next off of the Jazz for Toph C? I would imagine so. It's just where. Who knows? I'm sure that the thing is that John Collins actually had a good year last year, unlike Jordan Clarkson. So, like, I don't know how enthused they're going to be about buying him out necessarily, but I'd imagine he goes. It's just, I don't have an answer on where at this point.
Yeah.
From Daniel Garrett. Now that Bryce isn't on the pod, we can ask the hard-hitting questions. Case or John Deere? I have no idea.
Talking to a city boy over here.
Have you ever had a yard? Andrew?
Oh yeah, I'm from Long Island,
okay.
So like I've had nowhere near the lands that Bryce has had to maintain and whatnot. But I grew up on a quarter acre out in the suburbs of Long Island. I will say this: the only reason I know that Case and John Deere are brands of farming equipment tool places is because I used to work at Home Depot. But other than that, this is a Bryce question. So thank you, Daniel Garrett, for asking us this question.
Yeah, we got nothing on this one, unfortunately.
Nada. Zilch.
And final question from Daniel Garrett. Are you excited about the return of the college basketball video game in 2028? Did you guys play that a lot? Andrew, did you play the college basketball video game?
I was a 2K guy, unfortunately. Madden and 2K guy. So I never played the college basketball game.
I've always been way more of a college football and Madden guy. Like I never really even enjoyed, like I enjoyed the basketball games. Like I played March Madness and I've played 2K for sure. And I've owned 2K, but I am much more inclined to play either the show or Madden or college football.
You just hit on it. MLB The Show, the hours that I played that. And that's not even to mention MVP Baseball 2005, which is the greatest video game of all time. The hours of Dynasty mode that I dedicated, which just didn't leave any room for the college games, unfortunately. But I am happy for everybody that gets their game back. I know the college football version of this coming back last year was a big deal.
It was quite good.
Yeah.
I that is one that I bought and played. That is I do not play video games a ton anymore. Like I just don't have time, unfortunately.
Same.
Like between movies and reading 40 books a year and 2 jobs, realistically.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. When I when I met my now wife, it's when I had to tap out of video games. It was like, all right, do I want to be in a relationship or like to your point about managing time? Like there's other things that have had to go away. I don't follow the NFL as closely as I used to because of what we do for a living here, So I'm at, it's just an allotment of time. And I this is not to put down video games or this type of
I love them. Yeah.
I just had to tap out of something. So,
like I will play, like I have this year's MLB The Show. I will play it at some point, like when I have time in August and July. It's just like right now I don't have any time. So like there's zero chance right now.
Believe the last MLB The Show that I had was MLB The Show 2021. And Jacob deGrom went 30-3 in 3 straight seasons and finished with more wins than Cy Young by the time I was done with him.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty
back
decent.
when I loved him and he was the only good thing about my franchise. Now I would kill for a pitcher half as good as Jacob deGrom in my rotation to bring it all the way back to how this weekend went for our baseball team, Sam.
Oh boy. Look, the Pirates probably going to trade Mitch Keller by the time the show comes out, for God's sake. Like,
can they trade him to the Mets, who very much need a starting pitcher? Paul Blackburn is starting games for me right now.
Yeah, that was a rough experience on Friday. That was something.
A little bit.
Let's maybe avoid that moving forward. But
no, unfortunately, he's starting on Saturday against who? Juan Soto's old team, the New York Yankees.
Just bullpen game. Like, why? I mean, it'll probably be a bullpen game. Like, he'll get through the lineup.
Say, don't worry, the bullpen will be in by the third inning, Sam.
Let's get out of here. Andrew, tell the people where they can find the work. Tell people about Knicks Film School. Tell people about everything you got going on.
You could find me on all socials at Andrew J. Claudio _. Find Knicks Film School wherever you get podcasts, on our YouTube channel as well. Just crossed 35,000 subs, working our way up to 40. They did an emergency live stream that I may or may not have put together on the spot while we were live together doing this show, Sam. They only went 1 hour. They were able to control themselves and only do an hour on the Jordan Clarkson signing. So if you want some in-depth Knicks-specific thoughts to the Jordan Clarkson edition, Knicks get an 8th man. Most likely we'll get an 8th man in a couple days when he clears waivers. Check out Knicks Film School on YouTube, on all podcast platforms, on social at Knick Film School. I sometimes tease Mets therapy. You could tell me working through some of my therapeutic thoughts on the pod, but I have a TikTok and an Instagram and a Twitter for all my Mets thoughts called Mets Therapy. It's Mets Therapy AC. I think Zach Lowe watches it because he added me tonight when I was talking about Mike Brown, and he said, "But are the Mets cooked, Andrew?" And it's like, oh, hi, Zach Lowe. Please don't bring up the Mets. It's an off day. So if you want to join, check out all my Mets thoughts at Mets Therapy AC, wherever you look on social.
Hey, you know what happened tonight, Andrew?
What?
Pirates scored 7 again against the Cardinals.
See, it's not just us. It's happening to somebody else.
Don't let them get hot. That's where we're at.
I will say this. They're a 500 team under the new coach. Under the new
Don Kelly's like really good. Yeah. But Shelton was a catastrophe. Like it felt like they were just like totally out at that point.
Part of my copium yesterday was trying to look for positives in the Pirates. And I noticed what their record is since Don Kelly took over. And I was like, oh, okay. They're a 500 team. I'm okay losing to a 500 team. The way that they lost to a 500 team, I don't love, but I guess it's somewhat explainable. You know what else happened today, Sam? The Mets didn't lose. So it was a good day.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah. Don Kelly, Pittsburgh icon. Don Kelly, by the way.
Really?
From Mount Lebanon, from Pittsburgh. Went to like Point Park in Pittsburgh, like downtown. I can't remember if he's married to Neil Walker's sister or if Neil Walker is married to his sister. Like it's something like that. Like literally just like the baseball royalty family in Pennsylvania or in Pittsburgh. Don Kelly, shout out Don Kelly, make him the coach now. Like I'm all for him being full stop the manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates. I like that he benches O'Neal Cruz when O'Neal Cruz fucks up. Like we're all about it here. We're all about Don Kelly.
Can he pitch?
Pirates don't need pitching. They need hitters.
I'm saying, can you trade him to the Mets and can he pitch? Like I'm that desperate.
No,
Sam.
he was like a utility guy in the majors. So no,
a utility guy pitched the 8th inning for the Mets on Saturday. So
that is true. That's a very
shout out Travis Jankowski.
Oh my God. Oh goodness. Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. We will have a bunch of stuff going up there. I don't know when the next time I'm writing is. We'll figure that out at a different time. Yeah, go to The Athletic. Go subscribe to the Game Theory podcast on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube, where we're at like 53,000 subscribers. We appreciate you guys immensely. Thank you all for hanging out. Andrew's going to be up all night pulling videos, unfortunately, for this channel from what we talked about tonight on the show. Thank you all for listening. I think we had like 2,000 people in here at some point. That is so nice of you watching this thing live while we do this. And we thank you all for coming and hanging out. Until next time, we'll talk soon.